Welcome back, and apologies for confusion there over a little bit of timing. And if you had any sort of dead space on air, once again, I apologise. Nigel Higgs has now joined us for what is the 8th of our 9 interviews. Sorry, we've got 11 candidates, 9 we're interviewing today. This will be the 8th interview we've done today. So, Nigel, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today. Arriving just as the heavens have opened quite horrendously, it sounds, from the outside.
Down on top of us, yeah.
Absolutely. Did you happen to go to Haringey yesterday?
Yeah, I was there.
We were there in this.
Similar sort of conditions, yeah.
Oh, yes, it was. It got absolutely drenched. Did you manage to...
Yeah, I kind of hid under in the fan zone for part of it.
Yes.
It on the TV, but that was just because I'd kind of fallen past there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched a fair bit from the sides as well.
Yeah, I was aware of the fan zone because watching on the feed from there, we'd be watching what was happening on the pitch, and then about 30 seconds later, there'd be a big reaction coming from the bar.
Exactly. So if there was a free kick or something, get outside and see it live.
Yeah, exactly. Run and have a look. Well, thank you very much for taking time, as I say. Thank you very much for standing for election again. For people that don't know, you just let them know what you do is sort of day to day, your occupation.
Okay, yeah, I run and own a IT management consultancy which specialises in data management. Mm-hmm. So it's about managing large-scale databases for enterprise-scale clients. And I've been doing that for 5 years now. Mm-hmm. Before that, I had a career in IT and data, working mostly in the city.
Okay. And how long have you been a Wimbledon fan?
I've been a Wimbledon supporter since I moved to Wimbledon in the early 80s.
Okay.
I grew up in Salisbury, which is down in Wiltshire. When I got married, we then moved up here, and I got a job in the civil service up here, and I started following Wimbledon once we moved to a flat in the village. We hired a flat up in Wimbledon Village, and generally I played football most Saturdays, and most other days I could play football when I was at that age. So whenever I was free, I used to pop down and watch Wimbledon. But I probably really got switched on to Wimbledon round about the time of the FA Cup run and the FA Cup final, and in particular the celebrations after down in Wimbledon Town Centre and participating in that in Wimbledon Village that evening. So that kind of switched me on. Then again, occasional supporter, but really became full-on season ticket holder in the sort of late 90s in Selhurst when my daughters started expressing an interest in football.
Yeah. When you played football, what position did you play?
I used to play centre mid or left mid.
We kind of need a centre midfielder right now, Nigel, to be honest with you. Do you reckon you could do a job?
I've just had a knee replacement on my right knee, so I think that rules me out for the future.
I don't know, you're probably still more mobile than our current centre midfield, but anyway.
No comment.
I do apologise, listeners, by the way, if that noise of that rain is coming through, it is fierce to me. Just can't really do much about that, unfortunately. It is really bucketing down.
It's the King's Meadow flat roof.
Yeah, I'll just move the microphone a little bit closer to me.
It's not coming across. Okay, yeah, I'm a bit softly spoken most of the time anyway.
I think we all are against this backdrop. And then finally, so where do you watch games from now? Now at Kings Meadow, you watch games from?
Well, I was a director of the football club from 2006 to 2014, and I had a seat in the director box, which I've now retained, and my daughter, my eldest daughter Nicola, and her husband sit there, and we've just recently started bringing our grandson as well, my grandson. So.
Very nice.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of being on the Don's Trust board, wow, listen to that. Yeah.
Think about it, Luke, it's happening.
Yeah, Luke McKenzie arriving in this is going to be drenched. I almost want to look round and see it. How bad is it? Oh, yeah, it comes in waves, doesn't it? Right. In terms of then your time as a Don's Trust board member, I think you've now been on board 12 years.
Well, I was on originally when we formed the trust, so I was on right from the very beginning when we were down at Wimbledon Community Centre, a group of 50 or 60 of us or so, setting it up, and then when we moved into the full membership. I was carried on being a member throughout most of the 2000s, and then there was a motion passed by the Don's Trust AGM or SGM that executives could no longer be Don's Trust board members, which I supported and I voted for. I think it won by 2 votes, so I think if I'd not voted that way, it might not have gone. But from then on, I then just stayed as an executive director. I got re-elected in 2014, and again in 2016, and I'm standing again now.
Sorry, Matt, yes.
There is water coming through the ceiling in the players' tunnel.
Okay.
So, and it's right next to a light.
Right.
So, if electricity bangs out, we're gone.
Right.
So do you want to maybe convey that to the viewers?
Yes, if they didn't hear that. So apparently, because of the sudden outburst of rain, there is a problem with some leakage somewhere in the stadium, which could cause electrical problems. Nigel, this is going swimmingly well with this weather.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. So, should the feed cut or anything, that'll be the reason why, and we'll try and restore things as quickly as we can. But hopefully the rain will ease. But there is some leakage in the stadium, so we've got people who are on the case. Do not worry, Eric. If you're watching, don't panic. people are sorting it out. But yeah, just be mindful of that, and therefore we're going to probably run a little bit later as well with interviews and things like that today. So you've just said there, your time on the board quite a number of years now. What would you say to people that suggest that perhaps being on the board for too long a time can be a bit detrimental? Perhaps some people might suggest it could become a little bit stale, perhaps, or a little bit comfortable in the role. Would you agree? Well, clearly not, because you're standing for election, but what would you say to people who have those concerns?
I think that's a legitimate concern. I think particularly, with someone like myself who's been involved right from the beginning, it's could be seen as a blocker to new candidates with new ideas and new ambitions, and the younger candidates in particular coming on board. I'd say in defence of myself standing again is I've got a lot of continuity. I've got a lot of understanding of how the football club and the trust runs. I can kind of temper ambitions that may be present against the realities and the pragmatism that we need to display, particularly in the situation we're in Kingsmeadow in League One, and the constraints that puts on us. So I think I've still got the energy and enthusiasm to carry on being involved, and I hope that people can see that I've done a good job in everything I've been asked to do since I've been a board member, and been a part of what's been very successful, and helped to get us where we are now.
And you mentioned the work you've done previously. It was something that we were asked about was meetings, because on the manifestos, obviously, you clarify attendance at meetings and things like that. And obviously, sort of tidy that one up for people that have been questioning a few.
I thought there might be some questions. I mean, if you look back at my track record, over the 17 years, you'll see that that's definitely not the case. I was thinking 2016, it was only a small number that I missed. I mentioned the knee replacement. I've had two major orthopaedic operations in the last 2 years, which were non-weight bearing for around 6 to 9 months, and the recovery, particularly with my first operation, was quite difficult, and I missed a lot of board meetings then. I think it's recorded in the minutes that there was a concern, that I was missing so many in a row, but it's then been minuted that the reason was for medical reasons. So that I think I missed 4 then, and then I had a holiday and missed the 5th. So, believe me, they're not the only meetings. I don't think as well. We have also the committee meetings that we make. So
Are they not?
I'm not sure where we get to the 27.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same number, because I don't think all the committees have had the same number of sessions.
And those
but
are
I apologise if that's a concern to people. It won't be the case going forward should I get re-elected, because I'm hopefully fighting fit again, but not back on the pitch.
I mean, is that an issue of accountability perhaps the trust could look into then? Because that's something I hadn't factored, looking at meetings and things like that and the number. I think, do you think it would be better to have more clarity with people in terms of subcommittees and groups that meet that perhaps aren't registered in the same way as this figure was?
I think the total contribution you make includes many things, and not just the formal meetings. I think there are rules within the Constitution that can, if a on-stress board member is felt to be absent by their colleagues, who are the ones that most understand the situation and why there might be any reasons and what contribution people are making, then board members can, challenge that other board member and have the power to act and do something about that. And I think that's fine. I'm not sure how to communicate that out to members more widely when. Other than through these sessions and through what's recorded in the statements.
As you mentioned again, we're talking about, you've been quite a long service now. We actually spoke to you a couple of years ago, I think, for when you were standing for re-election. So it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We spoke to you on the podcast. I mean, I'm not sure what happens, Nigel, when we interview you. I think last time it was the music coming from the changing room, and it was Dancing Queen or something like that in the background. Yeah. So I do apologise. And now today we've got all these weather problems. One thing you did say when you ran for election 2 years ago was the issue with poor comms within the football club, between the football club board and the Donstress board, and perhaps then from the Donstress board to members. Do you think you have been able to improve this over the last 2 years?
I think it has improved. I think particularly in the last year. There's a number of board members who I won't name, but are probably known to members and fans, who have been very, very proactive in doing something about getting out and engaging with members. It's been the last year. It was the beginning of this year that we formed the new committee substructure, which has got a more formal engagement and communications group, and I think that's working really well. And again, those board members spoke at the general meeting the other night. That's kind of pushing out. I think the kiosk, what work we've done with the kiosk is getting better all the time. It's well branded now, so there's a focal point for members that, if they need to come and speak to us in person. I think there's still room for improvement, and I'd say that's still an aim of mine going into the next 2 years as well.
you mentioned there structures and groups and how they link and things like that. It's a question we actually had, kind of links in from Matt Cooper, who emailed in with a question beforehand. He said the structure of the club has been brought into question recently. Can you ensure that this structure is presented in a clear format, easily accessible? Now, you're referencing there. Can I clarify the differences there? Because you've touched on the structure you mentioned there. Was that within the Dons Trust board in terms of positions, or were you talking more generally the overall arcing structure of Dons Trust, AFCW PLC Football Club Board?
Which part about the structure?
So I'm sort of thinking, you mentioned there in terms of communications, you've communicated a different range of different way of explaining how the Dons Trust seems to be set up. If I've understood that correctly, I might not have done. That's what I'm looking to clarify actually. Okay. Is have you published a structure within the Dons Trust board, is what I'm asking, or are you talking about the structure that indicates who owns what and who's responsible for what?
Yeah, I mean there are two structures. I think they're both published. I'm pretty sure they're both published on the Dons Trust website itself. Yeah. One that explains the sort of corporate structure, if you like, and the share ownership and the contribution of the different independent companies and entities that exist within the overall structure. There's also another one which identifies these committees and who's on them. Because that one, I must admit, that second one, which is what you've referenced, and that's why I asked the question, I must admit I'm not familiar with. Okay. But you say that's on the Dons Trust website. I believe so, yes.
Okay. I have a feeling the Dons Trust website, unfortunately, is down at this very moment in time. Okay. But I will certainly have a search through, and that'd be good to see actually, because that's something I hadn't actually been aware of.
I think, well, apologies if it isn't. I mean,
I'm not. Yeah, and I must clarify, I'm not sort of putting that on you. Yeah. I think that's just suggesting perhaps this is linking with Matt's questions. People are unfamiliar with these structures and perhaps not knowing where to find them. Yeah. So I'm more saying it's there if people want to go and have a look for it. Definitely, in terms of Matt's question, I think he's more now thinking, I think a lot of fans are talking about football club structures and boards like that in terms of we've got Eric Samuelson and Joe Palmer, and people are sort of confused into the roles and responsibilities of that. Do you think that's something that we could make more clear and accessible to people?
I think so. I think in time that will come out. I mean, Joe is a fairly recent appointee. The structure within that, the football club board, is Eric remains the CEO. His responsibilities have been kind of focused on a smaller number and an increasingly smaller number of things as Joe gets on board and Joe takes on more responsibilities, as he understands the club better, as he begins to develop the targets that he needs to achieve. He's also a formal employee, which is, again, so it's part of the first step in a bigger change that will be coming as we move to Plough Lane, as we bring on more employed executives on the football club board. I mean, hitherto we've benefited from, there's a lot of talk about volunteers and the contribution that volunteers make to the Dons Trust and to the football club. We've essentially been run by volunteers, even at the, although some of them then become on to be paid, but if you look back at the evolution, and indeed the CEO is still effectively a volunteer, Eric's still a volunteer. So as that changes, as the successions begin to take place and the plans begin to fall into place, then that's something that we need to get really on top of, and to be able to communicate what the annual business plans are and the targets are of each of the areas within the club, and to formalise the way that we track those within the Dons Trust board.
Another question that sort of people have come to us with is about the membership, £25 for an annual adult membership for the Dons Trust. I think a couple of years ago you mentioned that you were looking into perhaps altering this, or looking at, or at least bringing up the issue. Was that something that's been spoken about? Yeah,
one of the groups was the membership group, one of the subgroups within the Dons Trust board, and they did look at that, and they produced a paper, and that kind of examined what possibilities there were and how we might address what benefits in particular membership would confer on a member. So really what we rely on so far is that members will they've got a share in the football club is the foremost thing that they're paying their membership for, and they get a chance to vote on key decisions and to get their ideas and interests communicated. I think in terms of whether £25 is too much or too little, that it was commented on. We do raise a substantial amount of money and have done over the years. I think it's past £1 million now that we've raised from, or pretty close to, we've raised from fees. Certainly several £100,000 that we've raised for fees. And they generally, I mean, the Dons Trust doesn't have a lot of expenditure itself, the surplus goes back into the football club. So it's another form of fundraising, if you like. I think in terms of whether we can incorporate it, I think what I mentioned in the last manifesto, in the last session, was whether we could look at incorporating season tickets, season ticket holders as members.
Yeah.
I think that's still an idea we want to look at. I know that Joe in particular and the Football Club Board are interested in looking at that again. I think there's pros and cons to that, because we want people who are committed to the ideals of the club, and if we just make automatic membership, some people might think that dilutes the interest, and things like getting through a restricted action, like we've had to do twice recently, might become harder if there's not quite the same level of engagement. I don't think that would be the case, but obviously going to the new stadium, we will generally take on more fans and hope to take on more fans. I think, some people might say that £25 is not enough or too much. I think, it really depends on individual circumstances. So, there's things we could look at, like the club has done since the word go, of having a season ticket fee plus, a voluntary donation. We could look at that as well, and particularly if we're growing more sources of income, the reliance on having further income from Don's Trust would diminish. So I think,
Just a very quick one from me. Not really much to do with yourself, to be honest with you, but a lot of money you said raised through membership fees and things like that almost goes to the football club in terms of like a donation or whatever, that sort of process. Do you just happen to know if we sort of budget for that as a football club, or is that just additional stuff, or is that something that wouldn't come into your remit at the moment?
Well, every penny we raise is budgeted for, and goes into the club. Any surplus. So the way that the budgeting has been done in the past has been that we work out how much we need to have to run the club, just to run the club, and any surplus is essentially directed towards the football budget.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought it might be the case. Stu, you've got some questions from the live viewers.
Yeah, well, we've got some statements from people. I think people are hiding from the rain at the moment, so...
Yeah, so apologies for all the disruption.
Yes, so I've got I've got a few statements, and I've got some questions that we had earlier that I think would be quite good for them as well. So statements-wise, we've got Tina Shepherd. I apologise, Tony Shepherd. I called her Tina earlier. I'm going to call you Tina all the time now, Tony. This is the best entertainment coming out of Kings Meadow on a Saturday afternoon for a long time. Very informative. And also Gary Fletcher, I don't want an answer from you, Nigel. Would Jake Jervis do a better job on the Don's Trust than he does on the pitch? Of course, no answer needed for that at all. Gary being... Yeah, stop being funny. Question from Mark Hendricks, who can't answer it because he hasn't got a microphone. Everything is written and put out as papers. Is it not a good idea to maybe bullet point things the Don's Trust Board propose, that this could possibly engage with younger members more?
I think that's an interesting point, and the sort of contribution that really makes people think. One of the things that's obvious about the Don's Trust, and it's obvious if anybody becomes a member of the Don's Trust Board, that it is very formal, and it is run on a formal basis. That the documents that are produced are very formal minutes and formal documentation, which is necessary because often we're dealing with commercial, business, and legal type matters. I think kind of opening up the communication to be a bit more accessible for all sectors of society is a really good point, and perhaps one we've not come across before, so I'd support that, definitely.
Any more, Stu? Was that?
Sorry, I'm just laughing at a comment that's come back in. I do apologise.
You've got the attention span of a six-month-old, basically.
Just a question from Dominique. If Nigel could look into the future, say 10 years from now, what would be his wish to see for the Don's Trust Board?
For the Don's Trust Board, I think what we need to do is to really sort out this relationship between the Don's Trust and the football club. Ever since we've started, we've had this, call it conflict, but sort of dichotomy or split between responsibilities of the Football Club Board and responsibilities of the Don's Trust Board. And I still don't think that's communicated well or well understood. And we need to really sort that out, particularly if we're moving to non-volunteers, non-fans who are in the executive positions, to make sure that we've got that very, very clear. And it's one of the things that one of the groups I'm working on is focused on to sort that out when we move into the new stadium and some of the leaders move on. So I think that's really important. I'd like us to be successful, still fan-owned. I'd like to see more of, ideally, I'd like to see us in the Championship and pushing to the top of the Championship with the stadium completed. And we've got 20,000, and sometimes we're filling that out, but we've certainly increased our membership and our fans and our season ticket holders substantially, so as that we can start to have a business model that will generally support the club, which we've been massively constrained by ever since we've been in the higher echelons of the non-league and the Football League.
Stu, you had one more.
Yeah, questions just come actually, and I'm going to use this one actually because I want to pick live questions coming in. Piggies is the name. I don't know who that is. But should the football club board have an engagement strategy that sets out when they engage with fans?
Yes, I think the events earlier this year when there was a number of meetings about some of the issues that were going on. I think having those open meetings, and there haven't been many. We had a number in the early years, which I recall, but there haven't been that many recently. So I think the whole organisation as a whole needs to communicate to the whole fan base and the whole supporters and the outside world as a single entity and have a joined up message about communication. And we need to fix that because it comes up every time there's a new set of elections and it's criticised, and we need to fix that once and for all. And I think we're getting closer to doing that. But yeah, we've still got a way to go.
Great. Yeah, to finish off then, Nigel, first of all, we have to say we're doing anagrams of all the candidates' names. And we've had some good ones, some apt ones. For you, it's High Egg Sling. Have you ever come across an egg sling?
No, I haven't, I'm afraid.
No, I can't say I have.
What a high one is, I don't know.
No, certainly something you don't want smuggling into football grounds. And then finally, we have a game to finish off. We call it 89 Seconds in recognition of us being founded as a football club in 1889.
Yep. And
it's very simple. Mark's going to set the timer and tell us when to start. He'll signal it by the end of the bell, and I'm just going to ask you some either or questions. And it's the first answer that comes into your head. All right, so when Mark gives us a signal.
Steady, go.
All right, peanut butter or jam?
Peanut butter.
Batman or Spider-Man?
Batman.
BBC Breakfast or ITV Good Morning Britain?
Good
featuring
Morning Britain.
Piers Morgan.
Oh, yeah, Good Morning Britain.
Okay. Susanna Reid more than Piers Morgan, I suggest.
Comment.
Battenberg or Madeira?
Madeira.
Well, go on. £25 a year to be a Don's Trust member is too expensive, yes or no? I know we've talked about that already. It's on the list.
I think no.
Would you rather be constantly itchy or constantly sticky?
Crikey. Sticky.
Kate Winslet or Meg Ryan?
Meg Ryan.
Cold bath or cold shower?
Cold shower.
Would you rather live without music or television?
Music.
Should self-service checkouts be banned?
No.
If you had to write a 1,000-word essay,
30 seconds.
and you had to write it either in crayon or typing it with just one finger of one hand, which one would you do?
Crayon.
Christmas Eve, in or out?
In.
Relegation, disaster, or chance to rebuild?
50.
Disaster.
9 years podcast hosts, Nick Draper or Stuart Deakins?
Nick Draper, of course.
That's the right answer. And then finally, when you make a cup of tea, and we've probably asked you this one previous podcast, do you make it by putting the bag in the cup first, or do you put the milk in the cup first?
Bag.
I think just to make sure we got that answer, because that is the correct answer, but it wasn't interrupted by the bell. Did you just repeat that one for us, Nigel?
Bag.
Bag. Anna Kingsley. Bag first, not milk first. Thank you very much. Nigel, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Apologies for the timing issue and then the weather. But all told, thank you again, and thank you for standing.
Pleasure.
And thank you for joining us. Now, with all the other issues we've had with weather and leaking roofs and all that business, Mark, our glamorous assistant, is about to put up a graphic saying the next interview will be at 3:15. We're looking at the time now, it's close to 3:25 already. So we're probably looking at about 3:30. So if you tune in at 3:30 for the final interview with Luke Mackenzie. Thanks for watching.